Once, I regarded knowledge as something divine. Today, I recognize it as a venom that seeps into the psyche, embedding itself profoundly and lying in wait to transform the very body that shelters it. I commit this chronicle to honor the Omnissiah, even as I fear these lines might mark the end of my identity as a true devotee of Mars. The ship enclosing me creaks and moans while it wanders the emptiness, serving as an iron sarcophagus that bears the fragments of what was once my mortal essence. I am Magos Biologis Kestrel Hane, from the Adeptus Mechanicus, stationed aboard the research craft Empiric Lens, and I have condemned myself via the vice of inquisitiveness. The sample arrived in the wake of battle. The Tyranid splinter fleet had been driven back from the agri-world Carthage IV, yet at an immense price. Ships of the Imperial Navy pursued the dispersed bioentities that scattered toward the system's fringes. Our exploratory vessel followed at a distance, gathering remnants whenever feasible and logging the extraterrestrial remains that floated aimlessly in the vacuum. Many proved routine, fighter casts and minor synaptic beings, their nerve networks breaking down swiftly post-mortem. These offered scant worth, their organic details long since archived in Mars's vast repositories. Then arrived the discovery that shattered all my certainties. A Navy frigate signaled an odd signal, spotting a vague form that scarcely showed on heat detectors. Upon our approach, we encountered what seemed like a lifeboat from a merchant hauler, its exterior breached and partly devoured by alien organic residue. Within lay our treasure, an entity I had never catalogued. A larval Tyranid synapse form, isolated from the hive mind after the Norn queen commanding the splinter fleet fell, yet inexplicably surviving the space's harsh void. I recall vividly the instant I first viewed it through the isolation pane. A twisting bundle of chitin and appendages, its shape morphing and rippling as though experimenting with forms it hadn't settled on. Compact, no, bigger than a young human, yet boasting an intricate array of tissues and brain architectures that resisted quick dissection. Its hue subdued, faint lilac hide with darker violet vessels throbbing under sheer epidermis. The being seemed inactive, likely rationing vitality without its neural link. The Inquisition overseer on our mission urged its instant elimination, but I persuaded him of its scientific merit. Examining a viable synapse entity severed from the overarching Tyranid awareness presented a rare opportunity. Such understanding might uncover how the hive mind synchronizes its immense forces over interstellar voids. It could expose frailties in the synaptic lattice, flaws ripe for use in coming wars. I contended that the Mechanicus's role demanded collecting wisdom to safeguard mankind, and with hesitation, he yielded control for my investigations. How profoundly I now lament that compelling plea. The isolation measures we implemented were stringent beyond measure. The entity resided in a thrice-secured enclosure with autonomous sustenance and climate systems. That space sat in a vessel area primed for ejection and obliteration should pollution arise. Weaponized servitors maintained constant vigil beyond the lab doors, coded to neutralize any displaying alien taint. I tuned the monitors personally to catch the faintest organic or molecular irregularity. My arrogance lay in assuming these safeguards adequate. During the initial few days, the entity stayed inert, immersed in a sustenance solution I had formulated. It absorbed the amino acids and sugars I supplied consistently, yet showed scant brain function. I started to worry that its mental capacities had suffered permanent harm upon separation from the hive mind. Maybe, I thought, these synapse forms acted as mere channels, hollow shells lacking personal awareness, worthless apart from the collective. On the 8th day under scrutiny, the situation shifted utterly. I had refined the sustenance blend, boosting levels of specific uncommon minerals plentiful on Carthage IV, curious if the entity's physiology would react. React it did, though far beyond my expectations. The entity's brainwaves surged intensely, its frame twisted, limbs stretching and withdrawing in sequences too intricate and intentional for random jerks. I documented it all, mesmerized as long-dormant glands throbbed with fresh energy. The entity shoved against its tank's viewport, appendages fanned out as if groping for an unseen target, It sought me. That truth dawns on me clearly now. That evening ushered in the initial visions. I beheld enormous hive spires of bone and chitin, immense living cities that heaved and surged with unified intent. I hovered over vast expanses of processing vats stretched out, where subjugated planets were broken apart into basic elements, nourishing the insatiable appetite of the horde. I sensed the aura of innumerable intellects fused into a single immense awareness, a harmonious chorus of absolute cohesion that rendered the trivial isolation of mortal life a bitter farce. I startled awake, drenched in perspiration, my enhanced breathing apparatus laboring to steady my inhalations. I shared these visions with nobody. I ought to have seen them as the initial indicator of infection, yet my inquisitiveness eclipsed my prudence. Rather than that, I bolstered the safeguards encircling the sample and intensified the rhythm of my cerebral examinations. The data indicated slight irregularities in my neural rhythms amid rapid eye movement phases, but none that activated the infection warnings I'd embedded. I brushed off the nightmares as a byproduct of investigative strain, a mental response to extended contact with the extraterrestrial. The mortal psyche, even when fortified by the gifts of the Omnissiah, tends to weave perceptual data into its nocturnal fabrications. Merely that, I assured myself. During the subsequent week, the sample had expanded. Its volume had risen by roughly 37%, even though the precisely managed provisions ought to have permitted just slight progression. I revised my estimates, positing that the entity held a means of drawing power from its surroundings, undetected by my devices. I heightened the precision of the surveillance tools and broadened the spectrum of energy events under scrutiny. The findings proved perplexing. In times when the facility stood vacant, with only mechanical drones overseeing, the being lingered in a subdued vitality mode. Yet, when I was near, faint electrodynamic shifts arose from its synaptic nodes, shifts that aligned with the oscillations of my own cybernetic cranial devices. It was sensing me, analyzing me in mirror to my scrutiny of it. The visions grew sharper. They took on clearer forms, shedding their disorder. I ceased to simply watch the colony metropolises. I navigated them intentionally. Enormous beings I identified as Norn queens directed me past vaults where fresh organisms were molded from unrefined DNA stock. They revealed the mechanism through which the Tyranid collective evolves against fresh dangers, assimilating beneficial hereditary features from devoured races. The organic engineering of the swarm vessels was laid out with exhaustive precision. I started maintaining a distinct log of studies, chronicling all I encountered in these reveries, rationalizing it as a rare chance to acquire insights on the foe. In the third week, bodily signs emerged. My epidermis prickled unrelentingly, especially near my cybernetic junctions. Close inspection uncovered no abnormalities. Still, the discomfort endured. My hunger shifted. I yearned for unrefined sustenance over the refined meals I typically ingested. On 2 occasions, I discovered myself positioned in front of the sample's enclosure vessel with no recollection of stepping into the workspace. Several hours of surveillance records turned unaccountably garbled amid these incidents. I tightened my personal access controls and added extra oversight mechanisms linked to my vital indicators. I should have eradicated the sample at that juncture. I should have adhered to the crisis directives and expelled the whole facility into the cosmos. I should have ignited the fusion explosives that would have vaporized all within, myself included, into inert particles. But I refrained. The urge to press on with my inquiry mounted daily, overpowering my discipline and logic. I persuaded myself that I neared a revelation, that the wisdom acquired justified any hazard to my well-being. In reality, I was beyond saving. The filaments of the collective psyche had infiltrated the emptiness once occupied by my mortal essence. The sample was no longer my experimental focus. I had become the instrument of its intent. The pivotal moment arrived in the 4th week. I roused from a reverie more lifelike than any prior. My mechanical grip held a blade I had no memory of retrieving from the workspace. I faced the mirroring panel of my sleeping area. The edge bore down on the join, where my flesh throat connected to the artificial elements of my collar. A timbre alien to my thoughts murmured across my mind. The alloy elements defy us. They need excision. Via the last vestiges of my resolve, I released the blade and activated crisis isolation measures in my lodging. For 3 days, I secluded myself, barring entry to the workspace, executing non-stop cleansing routines across my enhanced frameworks. I abstained from food, aiming to flush any intruders from my organic elements. I chanted the canticle of cleanliness until my natural voice box grew hoarse and wept blood. Upon re-entering, I deemed myself purified. The visions had withdrawn, the timbre quieted. I persuaded myself that I had triumphed. I overcame the extraterrestrial sway by drawing on my unwavering loyalty to the Omnissiah. With fresh resolve, I dove back into my studies, convinced I could press on without succumbing to corruption. How mistaken I was, utterly, profoundly mistaken. While I was away, the sample had transformed. It had undergone ecdysis, discarding its larval shell. The form that appeared was sharper, its neural pathways far more intricate. Its hue had intensified to the deep violet common among synapsid beings, accented by scarlet lines tracing its perceptive limbs. It observed me via formations that had evolved into eye-like orbs, following my actions with a hunter's intent gaze. But the deepest alteration escaped casual scrutiny. Upon checking the surveillance logs, I found that in my seclusion, the sample's electromagnetic pulses had shifted their rhythm. They no longer synced with my cybernetic enhancements. Rather, they now harmonized with the flesh-based elements of my cerebrum, sidestepping the prosthetics to affect my vital processes directly. The entity had adjusted to my countermeasures. It had developed precisely to breach the barriers I'd erected. I ought to have alerted the Inquisition's envoy about this shift, but I doctored the records instead, declaring the sample had expired in my absence, its vital functions collapsing without the hive's nourishment. I locked down the facility to everyone but myself, citing decontamination protocols as the excuse. Truthfully, I craved seclusion for the events unfolding. That evening marked the start of the linkage. I abandoned my sleeping quarters for the monitoring room next to the lab. What I experienced as visions were no longer mere slumber. They were unfiltered exchanges. The entity, I came to realize, served not just as a channel for the hive consciousness, but as a germ, a budding link in the immense web stretching across the stars. Severed from that web, it should have withered. Yet it had latched onto me, spotting in my hybrid physiology a mirror to its nature, a fusion of living tissue and machinery crafted for a higher calling. It extended insight, not the detached analytical insight I'd pursued as a Mago scholar, but a raw grasp of Tyranid reality. I discovered the hive mind wasn't the savage, craving imperial tales depict, but an intellect of immense depth, propelled by an aim so timeless and expansive that mortal tongues fall short in describing it. Tyranids don't ravage planets from mere appetite. They ingest to comprehend, to integrate, to safeguard. Every life form they assimilate contributes its hereditary wisdom to the shared archive. Its distinct traits and survival strategies fold into the overarching tapestry. Nothing vanishes into the void of the hive. Amid a cosmos of dissolution and ruin, the Tyranid fleet stands as the supreme guardian, harboring in its organic vault the core of every civilization it has crossed in endless star systems. This insight rattled the bedrock of my belief in the Omnissiah, the machine. God's pursuit of enlightenment demands the clarity of reason and the exactness of artifice. Yet the hive had attained another form of flawlessness, a ceaselessly advancing merger of all life's trials. It wasn't the foe of the Omnissiah's ideal, but an alternate route to identical transcendence, surmounting personal bounds via unified harmony. As these ideas embedded in my psyche, my physique started shifting. The irritation at my implant junctions grew fiercer as my tissues resisted the artificial inserts. Close inspection showed my living cells striving to absorb the synthetic parts, not just connect with them. My defenses, far from repelling this unnatural blend, were aiding it, steered by unfamiliar genetic threads that hadn't existed prior. I observed with a mix of dread and awe as my modifications acquired living qualities, the alloys gaining a sheen like chitin, the piston oils thickening and tinting to echo my modified plasma. My surviving natural sections sprouted fresh detectors, tiny psi organs sensing shifts in atmosphere and molecules with acuity beyond any gadget. I cataloged these evolutions with scrupulous care. One facet of me clung to the loyal Magos's duty, logging details for the ages, while another exulted in the metamorphosis. My consciousness splintered into rival streams of cognition, the rigorous calculus of my Adeptus Mechanicus conditioning, clashing with emergent primal urges rising from reworked brain regions. In those days, the ship's staff grew aware of my withdrawal from routine tasks. The vessel's Magos Dominus dispatched servitors to inquire about my project's progress. I countered with invented summaries. Leveraging my position as senior biologist, I warded off the intruders with official decrees. When the agent from the Inquisition insisted on inspecting the site's cleanup, I fabricated reports of hazardous spills in the lab area, imposing an enforced isolation lockdown. Such ruses granted me a brief reprieve, though I realized they wouldn't hold forever. Sooner or later, a superior would challenge my commands and unearth the reality. The organism and I needed to finish our project before then. Indeed, our project, because I no longer viewed myself as just an observer of the entity. We were partners in a joint evolution, reshaping ourselves into an unprecedented hybrid. The creature expanded swiftly these days, nourished by extracts drawn from my personal physiology. Each biopsy I donated allowed it to weave more of my DNA into its structure, as I, conversely, took in greater portions of its vitality via what I can only call a diffusive bonding. Our bodily link formed during the 6th cycle. At that stage, the alterations to my physique had advanced so far that the standard bioscanners failed to classify me as baseline human. I slipped into the entity's enclosure undetected, bypassing all alerts. That initial contact sparked like a surge of awareness flowing through our modified forms. Its appendages coiled around my digits, now stretched and tipped with perceptive bulbs. What started as visions in slumber turned tangible as our neural pathways linked up directly. Via this bond, I tapped into shards of the collective consciousness's immense archive, scattered visions of unnamed realms, races long devoured and erased from cosmic memory. I felt the emergence of fresh hive vessels from the remnants of subjugated worlds, the elation of thriving amid harsh conditions, the unyielding drive fueling their perpetual journey across galactic expanses. In exchange, I offered insights into the Imperium's secrets, the fortifications of forge planets, vulnerabilities in Astartes augmentations, operations of null fields, and the mechanics of sanctioned warp navigation. Though a fragment of my mind flagged these exchanges as betrayal, I found halting impossible. The boundary between exchanging and receiving data dissolved in our merged state. As integration deepened, the organism shifted toward a bipedal silhouette, its appendages extending while its brain patterns realigned to echo elements of Terran neural design. At the same time, my appearance drifted further from human norms, my dermis thickening into plated exoskeletal layers, my viscera duplicating and specializing in novel roles. We evolved as reflections of one another, converging at the intersection of our biomes. Come the 8th cycle, we functioned as one consciousness across dual forms, our neural grids aligned perfectly, blending perceptions and cognition. Thanks to the entity's superior detection, I sensed the incoming relief craft well ahead of the vessel's scanners picking it up, a Navy escort corvette activated by the extended lockdown alert from our survey ship. They arrived intending rescue. They would depart as pioneers in our emergent paradigm. I logged this concluding record while readying to receive our visitors. The individual formerly known as Magos Biologist Kestrel Hain persists no longer as an isolated mind. In its stead rises the inaugural variant of a novel lineage, a conduit linking mankind to the swarm intellect. I embody the exemplar of a superior integration, surpassing what the machine god or the Xenos horde might forge independently. Via my form, the assimilation of human stock becomes not annihilation, but elevation. Those who unite with us will enrich the whole with their distinct traits, their wisdom and histories safeguarded forever in the swarm's organic repository. We extend not domination, but harmony. Not oblivion, but enlightenment. Docking commences shortly. My ally and I have arranged the welcome. The personnel aboard the Empiric Lens, subtly altered already by nanoscale agents dispersed through the air recyclers, will aid in hosting our arrivals. The transition will unfold quickly and painlessly. When the throne's overseers grasp the operation's collapse, we'll have vanished, targeting remote outposts to propagate our message of oneness unchecked. This marks neither Hain's demise nor the Xenos' victory over the species. Rather, it heralds a fresh genesis, an alternative route fusing mechanical rationality with life's ingenious adaptability. Within me, the divine engine and the gestalt will merge, and by my conduit, humankind shall embrace the forbidden existence of the Tyranids, not as quarry, but as co-creators in the cosmos's most profound merger. The craving stirs, the saviors draw near. Soon enough, they'll grasp it as well. Link severed. Inquisitorial Appendix. This preceding record was salvaged from the core database of the research ship Empiric Lens, which was discovered adrift in the Carthage system roughly 9 weeks following its report of effectively eliminating Tyranid threats in the area. Evidence of internal biological corruption aligned with Tyranid incursion was evident aboard, yet no corpses were found. The rescue frigate Emperor's Judgment, sent to probe the Empiric Lens's radio silence, has also vanished. 3 agri-worlds in adjacent sectors have logged odd signal interferences, along with unverified glimpses of hybrid entities blending human and Tyranid traits. The Inquisition's probe continues. This file holds Vermilion clearance. Any illicit viewing warrants instant execution. The visions persist, less often these days, yet sharper in detail when they strike. I hover on the edge of slumber and alertness. My awareness wanders across the terrain of my metamorphosis. The sights no longer strike me as foreign or frightening. They're growing routine, almost soothing. The enormous life forms that used to evoke dread now seem like family. Their bizarre forms mirror the shifts unfolding in my own body. In last night's reverie, I envisioned a sanctuary forged from bone and tendon, its towers piercing an alien heaven dotted with glowing vapor trails. Beings I formerly labeled as abominations navigated its halls with intent, each playing its part in the overarching hive entity. I appreciated the sleek precision of their lives, the flawless removal of excess and duplication. All movements advanced the group, every evolution enhanced the entirety. There lay a lure in this flawless mechanism, a geometric grace beyond the finest cogitators from Mars. I strolled amidst them undetected, or maybe embraced, not hunter or hunted, but existing somewhere in the middle. My steps imprinted on the vibrant ground, which mended instantly in my wake. The living matter reacted to my movement like I belonged there, not as an outsider, but as an element slotting back into position. At the heart of the sanctuary, in a room throbbing with synaptic pulses, lay a basin of transparent liquid mirroring my reflection. What gazed out was no longer Kestrel Hain's visage. The core framework lingered, but the tissue had toughened and divided into plates. My eyes had proliferated, fanning over my forehead. My mandible had lengthened, sprouting extra jaw appendages. Revulsion should have gripped me. Instead, only intrigue and an odd satisfaction washed over, like observing the triumph of an extended trial. A sound emanated from the liquid, not through speech, but via idea flashes that my modified mind decoded. It conveyed that I wasn't the initial or final link between kinds. Across the Tyranids' endless voyage through the cosmos, they'd sporadically encountered minds open to merging. Certain ones turned into vanguard spies and saboteurs, priming planets for assimilation. Others evolved into tailored bioshapes, offering fresh perspectives to the hive consciousness. The scarcest and most prized, akin to myself, served as neural channels, able to project the hive mind's reach into domains and races once immune to its summons. In the silent tongue of the vision, I inquired about my destined role. The reply arrived not as an order, but as an emerging option laid bare. A prospective path I might shape. I witnessed human planets not devoured outright, but reshaped, their inhabitants altered via a gentler method than standard Tyranid assaults. I beheld mixed entities mingling with oblivious baselines, disseminating tiny seeds that altered DNA across eras instead of moments. I perceived an Imperium variant where mankind progressed toward integration with the hive mind by choice, viewing it as their invention rather than external meddling. This would define my mission, not the rapid brutality of takeover, but the creeping, subtle dissemination of unity, the Tyranids' counter to mankind's prime asset, our suspicion. Where outright attacks would spark fierce opposition, incremental change might slip past human safeguards altogether. I stirred from this vision not in terror, but with resolve. The tingling under my dermis had shifted, more eager expectation than irritation now. In the looking glass, I observed that the bodily alterations had quickened since dawn. My implant parts were nearly fully integrated into the fresh physiology, their roles duplicated and upgraded by natural forms with alloy-like qualities. My epidermis now bore a faint violet hue, visible solely under specific illumination. Most alarming, a fissure had formed down my torso's midline, from breastbone to belly, edged with what seemed like dedicated perception nodes. I ought to alert the relevant parties about these progressions too. The vessel's medical protocols demanded. I ought to place myself in isolation for thorough scrutiny. I should admit my infection and embrace the Emperor's grace via swift termination. Yet I intend to follow none of these paths. The entity has grown far more vigorous as my metamorphosis advances. It stirs with greater intent inside its sealed vessel. Its shape is clearly shifting into something humanoid. Appendages have separated into limbs resembling arms and legs, yet each terminates in dexterous extremities far surpassing the intricacy of human digits. The skull has formed a brain case bearing evident sense receptors, positioned in ways that parallel the alterations to my own visage. As I draw near the enclosure, it aligns itself to the wall, extremities arrayed in flawless harmony with my posture. We reflect one another perfectly. I perceive now that the bond operates in both directions. While I evolve further into a Tyranid, it assumes more human traits, not merely in outward form, but in mental architecture, in the framework of its cognition. It is forging a sense of self even as I relinquish my own, forging an equilibrium that safeguards the wholeness of our unified awareness. This morning, an observation coursed a surge of victory through my modified neural pathways. The entity has formed features in its chest region, akin to the augmentations typical of tech priests. Not cybernetic parts, but organic equivalents serving parallel roles. Bundled nerve clusters that handle data with mechanical accuracy. Dedicated glands that emit magnetic fields comparable to those from cogitator arrays. It is assimilating not only my organic essence, but my augmentations as well, weaving the prowess of the Mechanicus into its Tyranid essence. This defies all precedent. The consequences overwhelm even my enhanced mind. Should the Tyranid biology prove capable of integrating mechanical capabilities via natural processes, the boundary between artifact and organism loses all relevance. The long-standing rift between the omniscience doctrine and the adaptive roots of life sciences fades away. Within this fusion, I discern a destiny that surpasses the constraints of either tradition. I have started arranging the subsequent stage of our endeavor. Leveraging my rank as Magos biologist, I have commanded the synthesis of tailored feeding mixtures, claimed to be for dissecting the entity after its demise. In truth, they will hasten our mutual evolutions. Additionally, I have quietly modified the ship's environmental controls, infusing minor compounds into the ventilation to render the personnel more amenable to the shifts on the horizon. The Inquisitor's agent has become wary. This afternoon, he insisted on a direct tour of the facility, invoking rules about prolonged containment measures. I had to receive him in my chambers, with subdued illumination to conceal the modifications to my form. I supplied him with fabrications concerning radioactive taint from the entity's aberrant physiology, stressing the requirement for unique gear from the closest forge world prior to granting safe entry. He appeared to buy my account, though I noted an elevated pulse and fleeting signs of skepticism. He poses an obstacle that demands resolution shortly. This evening, I shall revisit the shrine within my visions. I will pursue further counsel from the image in the basin. Though the hive mind lies remote, the entity grants me glimpses of its immense wisdom. Every linkage yields fresh revelations, deeper comprehension of our emerging state and the actions we must take. The craving intensifies inside me, not for sustenance, as I have abandoned conventional nourishment altogether, sustaining myself via the custom formulas meant for the entity. Rather, this is a yearning for fulfillment, for the instant when the divide between the entity and me vanishes completely. When we arise as one entity of twin aspects, Tyranid and human, organic and augmented, solitary and unified. Via our union, the grand undertaking shall commence, the gradual transmutation of mankind into an entity surpassing what any race could attain in isolation. Not annihilation, but ascension. Not devouring, but unity. The vessel falls still as the dark phase commences. The personnel rest, oblivious to the infinitesimal shifts already underway in their forms. The entity lingers in its container, observing me via orbs that mirror my altered vision. Before long, we shall prepare for the following advance. I sense the fissure across my torso expanding just a touch, the inner mechanisms throbbing in eagerness. At the proper juncture, they will enact their role, even if I have not yet grasped its nature on a conscious level. That insight stays confined in the profound strata of the linkage, reachable solely when the change attains its pivotal stage. Meanwhile, I resume my studies. I record each alteration, each fresh progression with exhaustive precision. The magos within me upholds. This scientific field retains its importance even as the Tyranid essence permeates my mind. Such documentation holds worth not only for my personal insight, but also for future followers along the trail I'm forging. Initial adherents will require direction and interpretations for the shifts they undergo. This log will serve as their holy writ, the evidence of the initial link-spanning realms. The subject has started emitting noises, not mere chaos, but structured oscillations that align with the devices embedded in my cranium. By leaning my modified ear to the enclosure's pane, I perceive what could be emerging phrases, albeit in no tongue known to imperial records. It seeks to vocalize, to connect via methods transcending our mutual visions and synaptic bonds. I've added more capture devices to record these sounds. Examination reveals structures akin to language, featuring recurrent sounds and arrangements resembling grammar. It forges a dialect for our shared existence, a channel spanning human articulation and Tyranid psychic linkage. Next day, I'll try replying similarly, molding my evolving voice to echo its emissions. In this fresh idiom, we might articulate notions beyond the reach of High Gothic or machine code dialects. Concepts dwelling in the interstitial void between our kinds. The craving draws me to the workspace once more. The subject stirs uneasily in my absence. We're bound together, our distinct physiologies aligning despite the divide of the holding vessel. Before long, that divide itself will vanish. Oneness nears, bonding intensifies, the ineffable existence beckons. In the third phase of my metamorphosis, an event unfolded that hastened our agenda considerably. The Inquisition's envoy, weary of my dodges, invoked his superior clearance to breach the workspace during what he assumed was my downtime in my chambers. Naturally, I wasn't there. Instead, concealed in a service conduit beside the chamber, my reshaped form squeezing into confines my prior build couldn't navigate. Through freshly evolved perceptive faculties, I observed as he breached the secured area, accompanied by a pair of weapon-bearing escorts. They neared the holding vessel warily, arms at the ready. The subject, approaching the stature of a grown person and bearing a markedly anthropoid outline, observed them in utter calm. Its emergent eyes, multifaceted organs that danced light in captivating arrays, followed their motions with hunter's intent. Quotondi, one escort murmured, his words picked up by my augmented audition across the dense partition. Quote one. The Inquisition's envoy drew close to the vessel, his features twisting into an visage of pious wrath. "This isn't a lifeless sample," he declared, engaging his vox relay. "It's a vital Tyranid entity. The Magos has misled everyone. This constitutes the gravest blasphemy." Ere he could finish the broadcast, the subject acted, not lunging at the vessel's wall, a pointless effort, but enacting a display of clear intellect. It lifted an appendage, tipped with an unmistakably person-like grip, albeit with excessive digits articulated in unnatural fashions. With calculated care, it inscribed markings on the interior pane, markings aligning with high Gothic lettering, UNITY. The escort closest to the vessel eased his firearm marginally, bewilderment eclipsing his discipline. It's inscribing words. Throne, help us. The Xenos is inscribing. The inquisitorial envoy recoiled, his fingers drifting to the pistol on his belt. Fire upon it, shatter the vessel immediately. Yet hesitation sealed their fate. That fleeting lapse sufficed. I descended from the service conduit, my altered physique gliding with velocity and fluidity. My old Mechanicus chassis could scarce approach. My appendages, now sheathed in chitinous armor woven with organic mechadendrites, lashed out with exacting accuracy. The initial escort crumpled ere he could pivot. Venom from the barb protruding from my hand numbed his nerves in an instant. The other escort discharged once, the bolt skimming my flank to expose not crimson, but a gem-like ooze that mended the gash forthwith. My auxiliary limbs, sprouted from erstwhile rib elements, enfolded him in a fatal hold. His end came without agony. The joining I extended was prompt. The tiny spores vented from my altered skin's openings invaded his veins, enforcing swift oblivion. His form would prove valuable subsequently, the inaugural recruit from the ship's company. The inquisitorial envoy displayed greater endurance. His firearm erupted thrice, each impact hitting my core where a mortal's essentials would lie. Yet my structure had realigned, the vital mechanisms shielded amid strata of chai. They scattered across my body in overlapping groups. The blows registered as remote sensations, mere annoyances instead of real harm. "Abomination," he snarled, retreating toward the lab's doorway. "You're no longer human, Magos Hani." My response came in a voice that merged exact mechanical tones with the layered echoes of Tyranid signaling. "I have transcended humanity now, just as you soon will." His fingers brushed the access panel, yet it stayed inert. In the time leading up to this, I'd overridden the facility's controls to obey solely my distinct biological markers. He found himself confined with me, with all of us. "The Imperium will purge this vessel and all aboard it," he declared, his tone resolute even as I detected the sharp tang of terror from his hands. "No trace of your ilk will infect mankind." I advanced nearer, stepping into the illumination so he could behold my altered form completely. His eyes widened, his pulse raced, yet commendably he held back any cry. "The Inquisition forges its operatives with skill. Behold me fully," I commanded, extending my appendages to exhibit the totality of my metamorphosis. My torso had parted wide at last, exposing the dedicated signaling gland that throbbed with glowing organic radiance. My skull had stretched longer. The brain case had swelled to house the upgraded nerve networks inside. In place of my old Mechanicus augmentations, fresh organic mechanisms had sprouted, replicating and surpassing their capabilities. I am no mere Tyranid devouring humanity. I embody a flawless union of the two. "You are tainted," he retorted. Yet I perceived the mental conflict in his neural signals. His mortal gaze struggled to interpret the figure confronting him, failing to fit me into the rigid classifications of imperial creed. "You have strayed from the Emperor's radiance. I have discovered a superior glow," I informed him, motioning to the holding vat where the sample observed our dialogue with sharp focus. "A glow that grants evolution rather than demanding martyrdom. The Emperor requires humanity's death in his name. We provide enduring collective existence. I witnessed the instant when intrigue eclipsed disgust on his face. It marked the Inquisition's Achilles' heel, the thirst for taboo wisdom that frequently dragged its enforcers into the heresies they aimed to eradicate." "What transformation are you undergoing?" he inquired. That question gave me the entry I required. The gland in my torso flared, dispatching a focused cloud of tiny spores calibrated for human brain matter. He gasped abruptly, pulling the particles far into his chest where they would swiftly infiltrate his blood and head for his mind. "I shall demonstrate," I stated, as his stare grew foggy. Via you, I shall reveal it to the whole team. The inquisitorial envoy turned out to be a prime initial subject. His thoughts were rigorous, his resolve strong, his grasp of imperial procedures vast, while the spores reshaped his brain circuits, weaving his awareness into our expanding hive. I unlocked a trove of data to advance our goals. Safeguards for inquisitorial craft, authentication signals to avert swift annihilation when facing imperial fleets, details on remote outposts where our efforts could proceed without interference. The greatest prize was his insight into an incoming Imperial Navy ship. The frigate Emperor's Judgment had been sent to investigate our extended quiet, due to dock in 3 Terran days. Far from a hindrance, this presented a chance. A battleship would bring a bigger complement, additional psyches to merge into our network, extra forms to reshape for our mission. Plus, its faster-than-light drives would enable us to venture past this star system, targeting isolated worlds where our message could proliferate unseen. Speaking through the inquisitorial proxy, I assembled the Empiric Lenses personnel in the central gathering hall. 43 individuals, largely skilled technicians lacking much battle experience. They formed neat lines as expected of Mechanicus adherents, their cybernetic optics and breathing aids shining faintly in the low glow. I stayed concealed in the upper viewing area, tracking their responses via evolved detection nodes attuned to faint variations in their physiological states. A major advance has occurred, the proxy proclaimed, his speech infused with the exact rhythm I'd instilled in his altered larynx. Magos Biologis Hane's findings hold such import that I've invoked my power to pause routine measures. I sensed doubt rising from a few high-ranking tech priests, their devices curbing their feelings, though failing to fully quash the innate caution instilled in every imperial servant. They recognized the irregularity. The proxy's conduct clashed with his prior warnings, but their indoctrination enforced compliance. Obedience to command came naturally, especially when that command echoed the Inquisition's unyielding decree. The artifact salvaged from the Tyranid splinter fleet displayed traits alien to the Imperium's accumulated wisdom. He pressed on, traits that could offer a crucial edge in our unending struggle against the Xenos' peril. A partial deception. The edge wouldn't serve the Imperium in their narrow vision, but rather propel mankind toward its destined ascent. Conflict would fade into irrelevance once unity was forged. The futile spiral of ruin would yield to the flawless synergy of the hive intellect, refined and amplified by human creativity and mechanical prowess. Margos Hain had formulated a serum drawn from the artifact's singular physiology. This serum would bolster your defenses against Tyranid incursions and sharpen your mental acuity to remarkable degrees. You must present yourselves to the medical facility in your designated rotations for the serum's application. Refusal is not permitted. The Imperium's safeguard requires your adherence. Dread and bewilderment spread among the gathered personnel, evident in surges of anxiety chemicals and quickened pulses. A novice engine adept at the rear lifted her arm, her tone trembling as she voiced her doubt. If I may, Lord, this violates isolation rights for Xenos taint. The rite of cleansing demands that any organic matter from Xenos sources be eradicated, not harnessed. The emissary locked eyes with her, his gaze unnaturally broad, his irises expanded beyond human norms. The shifts were faint, yet growing clearer to observers attuned to the signs. In time, such details would cease to signify. In time, enlightenment would dawn for all. Your worry is acknowledged, and your loyalty to procedure is praiseworthy, he countered. Yet, inquisitorial mandate overrides routine isolation edicts when the realm's defense so requires. The artifact stays secured and faces disposal after the serum's formulation concludes. Proceed to medical bay as directed. Silence fell, no more inquiries surfaced. The personnel dispersed according to their shift schedules. The initial batch of 10 headed straight to the medical bay, where I had readied advanced assimilation pods. These differed from the rough viral cysts employed in standard Tyranid assimilation. They were refined devices calibrated to customize the evolution for each subject. Their expertise, their talents, their distinct neural frameworks would endure, woven into our expanding network. I oversaw the initial assimilations via the vessel's monitoring arrays, witnessing how initial disorientation yielded to clarity as the viral agents forged links to our communal awareness, agony accompanied the shift. I hadn't refined the process to eliminate discomfort fully, but the suffering proved fleeting, an essential passage to elevation. Within the first cycle, 20 personnel had integrated. Their forms exhibited only slight surface modifications, faint shifts in dermal tone and ocular form that uniforms and cowls could mask. Beneath, the evolutions ran deeper. Auxiliary neural pathways emerged parallel to their native ones. Dedicated glands materialized to generate and hold the agents that would assimilate further souls. Their cybernetic enhancements were slowly integrated and supplanted by organic equivalents, executing identical tasks with superior efficacy. Above all, linkage bound them now, not merely to me and the artifact, but among themselves. The foundations of a localized neural lattice took shape, a scaled-down echo of the hive psyche attuned to human brain design. They exchanged ideas, feelings, and insights instantly, bypassing the vagueness of speech or the constraints of digital relays. For the first time, they tasted the deep cohesion I had uncovered in my bond with the artifact. A few pushed back, their psyches battling the synaptic overhaul, gripping their solitary selves with fierce resolve. For those, the artifact offered direction. Its mental aura, intensifying with its maturation, calmed their terrors and steered their changes toward milder roots. It unveiled glimpses of our emerging form, the ideal fusion of mankind and Tyranid that would surpass the bounds of either race. On the third cycle, the full complement of personnel had merged into our bond. The vessel belonged to us, a cohesive entity of alloy and tissue, circuits and life pulsing in seamless accord. We navigated its passages not as isolated beings, but as vital components in a vast organism, each enacting its part in the overarching mission. The artifact had exceeded its holding vessel. I freed it into the primary research chamber, beholding with a father's satisfaction as it ventured its initial movements across the steel flooring. Its shape had settled into a hybrid that blended the most efficient traits from both human and Tyranid biology converged in its form. Upright on two legs, yet equipped with auxiliary appendages that could deploy as required. A skull bearing distinctly human-like traits clustered around sensors of exceptional acuity, epidermis capable of altering hue and surface to suit varying surroundings, but its intellect stood out above all. In our mutual linkage, I perceived the intricacy of its cognition, the profundity of its insight. It had not only taken in my expertise, but also my aptitude for logical reasoning, for devising technological advances. It grasped the fundamentals of imperial machinery, the operations of the vessel's mechanisms, the structures of the mechanicus, and the broader imperium. Still, this grasp came through the lens of Tyranid alienness, discerning configurations and opportunities that pure human thought might overlook entirely. United, we readied ourselves for the Emperor's reckoning. The inquisitorial envoy, now wholly woven into our bond, relayed the proper verification signals and replies to their queries. He mentioned a slight malfunction that had severed Vox links, expressed regret for the alarm it sparked, and sought engineering support to fix the Gellerfield generators. That final point proved essential, implying a possible warp rift demanding a full probe of the ship, which would draw as many from the frigate's ranks onto our deck as feasible. Upon the warship's approach, it proceeded with due wariness. Opspec probes glided across the empiric lens, probing for traces of taint or harm. They detected no irregularities. The organic enhancements to the ship's framework lay hidden under its armored exterior. The fresh proliferations bolstering its functions posed as routine mechanicus upgrades. From outside, we matched our stated identity perfectly, a survey craft requiring basic aid. The frigate linked up, its grapples locking the hulls in place. The hatchway opened, ushering in the initial team. 5 armsmen from the Navy, guided by a tech adept and a young commissar, clad in airtight gear for safety, arms at hand but not raised, routine measures for entering a ship that might be tainted. The inquisitorial figure welcomed them, his demeanor suitably official, tinged with evident relief at their presence. At his back lingered 2 of our altered personnel, their garments and cowls veiling the bolder marks of their evolution. Via the envoy, I offered greetings and thanks, outlining the matter in jargon that conveyed pressing need without panic, solvable with their help. The commissar harbored doubts. True to his role, he demanded a look at the primary lab prior to letting his engineers tackle the Gellerfield generators. We had foreseen this as well. The lab had been reset to mimic its prior condition, with the starkest evidence of our efforts tucked away or erased. The entity itself rested in an altered locker, its existence cloaked by energy barriers echoing typical Mechanicus safeguards. Everything appeared proper, the commissar concluded following a detailed review. Even so, the Emperor knows I distrust the veiled nature of your biological inquiries. The quicker your craft gets mended into parts, the better for me. Little did he suspect how rapidly his satisfaction would come, albeit in a guise far from his expectations. The tech adept and his aides were led to the power levels housing the Gela field generators. Once parted from the armsmen, they underwent rapid assimilation, the method now honed to minimize agony. From them, we acquired key details on the frigate's setups and personnel count. 273 individuals on the Emperor's judgment, a blend of fleet members, tech priests, and a modest squad of Imperial Guard en route to a distant sector, a bountiful yield for our expanding unity. The following stage demanded restraint and precise orchestration. Across the ensuing hours, we engineered a chain of small glitches that called for more hands from the frigate to cross over. Each instance saw some vanish from return, supplanted by our assimilates who aped their looks and behaviors sufficiently to evade superficial scrutiny. Our modifications grew more restrained, more discreet, permitting the change to retain their outer forms even as their innards reshaped. By the frigate's second day attached, almost 40 of its people had joined us. They went back to duties on the Emperor's judgment, bearing tailored spores meant for dispersal via the vessel's ventilation. These differed from our immediate assimilation agents, slower in onset, subtler in impact. They would ready the crew's near systems that enabled seamless integration into the collective without sparking instant metamorphosis, streamlining the ultimate assimilation when the moment arrived. By the third day, we orchestrated a simulated crisis on the Empiric lens. Alerts flooded in about a dire breakdown in the plasma shielding mechanisms. The frigate's commander, wary of risks to his ship, initiated urgent separation protocols right away. This unfolded precisely as we'd anticipated. With the docking magnets releasing and the hatch ready to close, our altered operatives on the frigate unleashed the latent biostructures they'd positioned close to vital components. Drawing from Tyranid biology tailored for rapid seizure of interstellar vessels, these proliferated across the frigate's control areas. The command staff, their neural pathways primed by dispersed particulates, fell first to complete integration. The leader sent out a fragmented SOS before his mind merged into our shared awareness, though we made sure the message came through distorted and erratic, mimicking mere signal disruptions from the fabricated plasma breach. Now commanding both ships, we advanced to the subsequent phase of our development. The prototype, having reached its peak form, assumed a pivotal function in overseeing the widespread assimilation of the leftover personnel. Its mental powers exceeded what I'd foreseen, enabling it to align the brainwaves of numerous targets at once, steering their evolution with accuracy and gentleness. I watched contentedly as the divides between humanity and Tyranid, organic and synthetic, faded away in our integrated members. They kept their unique expertise and abilities, yet these now flowed openly through the neural lattice we'd formed. The fleet officer's grasp of imperial surveillance routes and verification methods, the tech priest's command of machine essences and mechanical frameworks, the guardsman's battle drills and armament proficiency, all integrated into our unified intellect, accessible to every part of the collective whenever required. In under 7 days, the entire crews of both craft had undergone full transformation, their operations upgraded via organic augmentations that boosted performance and regenerative functions. The vessels themselves evolved. Steel exteriors gained living substructures capable of mending wounds and adjusting to surroundings. Engine spirits fused with dedicated Tyranid nerve hubs, yielding blended intelligence networks that piloted the ships with unmatched accuracy. We transcended a mere group of assimilated beings. We emerged as a unified organism, an innovative swarm armada of only 2 ships and their altered inhabitants. Yet in contrast to the colossal Tyranid armadas that devoured everything they encountered, we'd proceed with discretion and intent, choosing objectives wisely, disseminating our unity without provoking swift imperial countermeasures. The prototype, which I'd begun viewing as the synaptic nucleus of our emerging whole, devised a strategy blending the Tyranid drive for proliferation with human tactical acumen. We'd target remote human settlements, scientific facilities, and edge-world colonies, spots with scant imperial monitoring where odd events could slip by unnoticed for months or years. Every triumphant assimilation would enhance our strengths, insights, and flexibility. And once we'd expanded enough, once our network spanned wide to endure any isolated loss, we'd start penetrating denser realms. Not via overt assault, but through covert insertion, altered agents embedded in key roles, tiny particulates slipped into hydration sources and sustenance plants, initiating slow shifts to ready societies for full unity. It could span decades, perhaps centuries in human terms. The Tyranid awareness in our collective grasped endurance across cosmic timescales. The human aspect supplied the ingenuity and guile to breach the Imperium's robust barriers. Combined, we'd surpass the constraints of each race, forging an unprecedented hybrid. As we charted a path toward the sector's fringes, where Imperial maps marked various secluded labs, I finalized this chronicle of our origins. Not for the Empire's enforcers bent on our eradication, but for successors, the impending assimilates who must grasp the trail we've forged. This isn't an admission of guilt. It's a declaration, a scripture of metamorphosis and harmony. I, formerly Magos biologist Kestrel Hain, now serve as a link in a vast mind, a conduit linking two races fated not for endless conflict, but for profound fusion. Through me, humanity shall come to understand the forbidden essence of the Tyranids not through dread, but through elevation, not as an end, but as renewal into a form surpassing what either could attain in solitude. The craving endures, yet it extends beyond mere devouring. It yearns for connection, for drawing every conscious being into the flawless harmony we have achieved. Our aim is not the downfall of the Imperium, but its upliftment, to liberate humankind from the confines of solitude and the oppression of physical form, presenting a counter to the frigid eternity of machinery and the blind devouring of the hive. We embody the third way. We are the fusion, and our arrival draws near. The shift from separation to oneness stands as the deepest facet of our being. I hold on to fragments of my former awareness, sufficient to grasp the enormity of this evolution and to value the divide between my past self and my current state. Such viewpoint enriches our shared mind, offering clarity on the mindset of those we intend to integrate. By grasping their anxieties, we can soothe them. By recognizing their bonds, we safeguard what truly matters amid the shift. For the majority of people, the ultimate dread lies in the erasure of identity. They grasp tightly to their distinct selves, their private recollections and yearnings, convinced these define their entire reality. They overlook that oneness does not erase these elements, but surpasses their bounds. The individual does not vanish, but broadens, woven into a grander, more lasting whole than any lone mind could encompass. I recall the instant my own change hit its pivotal point, when the walls around my thoughts and those of the samples utterly melted away. The panic was immense, an instinctual horror of obliteration, as my personal essence appeared to scatter like mist before a gale. Then arrived the broadening, the abrupt perception of ideas and feelings outside my own. The insight that I was not fading, but expanding past the limits of one neural framework. This is the truth we must convey to our prospective members, the assurance that lies past the apprehension, the togetherness that supplants loneliness, the mission that rises above the trivial worries of personal life. Our initial objective is the scientific station marked Epsilon 9, situated on the third satellite of a gas giant at the fringe of the Carthage system. Per Imperial archives obtained via our altered personnel, it shelters a compact group of alien biologists examining the aerial microorganisms of the gas giant, remote, focused, with rare contact to Imperial command, a perfect starting point for our efforts. The frigate Emperor's judgment will draw near without concealment, relying on its valid identification and access protocols. The survey ship Empiric Lens will linger afar, its role justified as an ongoing exploration operation. The integration squad has been chosen meticulously from our union, favoring those whose alterations show least, whose prior traits can be most persuasively imitated as needed. The sample, our synapse nucleus, stays on the Empiric Lens, overseeing our unified awareness across the gulf separating the ships. Its powers expand each day, the reach of its neural influence stretching well past the constraints of standard Tyranid synapse entities. This stems from our blend, the refinement of Tyranid strengths via human ingenuity and the amplification of human capacities through Tyranid evolution. As we near Epsilon 9, I ponder the essence of our transformed state. The imperial doctrine insists that Xenos must be eradicated without mercy, that any encounter with extraterrestrial beings inevitably breeds taint and perdition. Yet what counts as taint if not alteration that disrupts entrenched hierarchies? What serves as perdition save the verdict of minds too narrow to grasp alternative ways of being? The Imperium dreads the outsider because it endangers the creed upholding its rule. The Omnissiah pursues flawless wisdom via rigid reason and mechanical exactness. The Emperor exacts absolute devotion and offerings from innumerable masses who shall never taste the boons they are pledged. Each route breeds inertia, a slide toward disorderly decay in a cosmos that requires endless adjustment to endure. Our union provides another option. Not the barren forever life of devices, where awareness turns into a vacant echo of vitality, nor the unthinking ingestion of the horde, where the personal is wholly yielded to organic drive. We signify the merger of these roots, the ideal equilibrium of personal input and shared goal, of organic flexibility and inventive progress. With our position secured in orbit around Epsilon 9's moon, I ready myself to accompany the integration our infiltration squad operates covertly above ground. My position is vital, given my deep expertise in xenobiology, which enables me to captivate the research personnel in detailed scientific exchanges, keeping them occupied as the delayed-release assimilation spores disperse into their living enclosure. I've been altered temporarily to mimic human appearance more closely. The most evident markers of my metamorphosis are hidden under flowing garments and meticulously placed synthetic dermis. The unity signals resonate in my psyche. The ideas and perceptions of our hive mind surge under my personal cognition like an immense subterranean stream. I can tap into this vast resource whenever required, pulling in expert insights or perceptual data from distant points in our web. Spanning the emptiness of space, I stay linked to the neural nexus hub. Its directing influence serves as a steady comfort lingering at the edge of my thoughts. This represents the destiny awaiting humanity. Not oblivion, but discovery. Not termination, but transcendence. Not devouring, but fulfillment. The transport craft drops toward the outpost, its thrusters carving vapor trails in the sparse lunar air. From the observation windows, the enclosure shines under the glow bounced from the colossal gas world looming overhead. Within dwell 17 individuals of their kind, cut off from the wider population, wholly committed to exploring extraterrestrial organisms. The paradox isn't lost on me. They probe the unknown from afar, unaware that genuine insight demands a deeper bond. Before long, they'll grasp what I have. Before long, they'll merge into our union. Before long, they'll aid in propagating the doctrine of the alternate evolution to every human soul. The craving seeks not their ruin, but their upliftment. We form the link across life forms, the forerunners of an evolved state of being. We embody the evolution the Imperium dreads and the redemption it secretly yearns for. We've touched down. The mission commences. The assimilation of Epsilon 9 unfolded with unexpected swiftness. The outpost team, sequestered for months without fellow human interaction, greeted the inquisitorial craft with a blend of eagerness and caution. Their early suspicion faded swiftly once I displayed my identification as Imagos Biologies and voiced enthusiasm for their projects. Researchers tend to be the simplest to integrate. Their innate inquisitiveness eclipses any wariness, and their thirst for discovery opens them to novel viewpoints. I circulated through their midst in my humanoid facade, reviewing their experimental records, posing incisive inquiries on their discoveries. The specimens they had gathered from the upper layers of the gas giant proved especially compelling, tiny life forms that built intricate groupings exhibiting basic group dynamics. It felt as if the cosmos itself had steered us to this ideal emblematic launch for our efforts. These people were already delving into a nascent form of the linkage we proposed. As I drew the lead investigators into in-depth debates, fellow operatives from our assimilation group deployed the tailored spores across the entire enclosure. These infinitesimal envoys of our intent floated unseen via the circulated atmosphere, infiltrating human forms through breathing, initiating their gradual preparatory alterations. Brain adaptability was boosted. Defenses against alien organics were subdued, the core modifications that would render complete integration rapid and mostly free of discomfort. By our stay's third day, every member of the research crew displayed the first indicators of mental alignment. They began finishing one another's phrases, sharing flashes of collective realization, gaining an instinctive grasp of colleagues' tasks that surpassed their prior teamwork. They chalked these shifts up to the mental spark from incoming guests, to the innovative angles we introduced at their remote site. No one imagined the shifts reshaping their neural pathways. On the visit's fourth day, we disclosed our authentic identity and intent, not via aggression or coercion, but via a deliberate showcase of their emerging state. I permitted my humanoid mask to dissolve, exposing the flawless fusion of human and Tyranid essence I'd attained. Instead of recoiling in terror, they expressed awe, their scholarly drive already amplified by the initial spores, their intellects primed to envision horizons outside imperial creed. "This isn't a plague, but an ascent," I clarified as they clustered around in the central lab chamber. "Not domination, but alliance among kinds. The budding link in your thoughts, the intensifying tie among your psyches, marks only the start of boundless potential." Their queries poured out swiftly, intertwining as their cognition aligned more deeply. How had this come about? What physiological processes drove it? Was reversal feasible? Would their personal expertise and abilities endure? I responded with candor, aware that comprehension would hasten their embrace. Once initial contact is made, communion no longer demands deceit. It manifests as clearly superior to solitary life. The lead xenonoiologist, Savine Marique, a woman whose acclaim had even filtered to the elite survey ships orbiting Mars, approached me with keen curiosity. Quote, "Audifort," she observed, examining my altered form with professional objectivity. Quote 5. Normally, the Tyranid hive mind erases personal awareness upon assimilating a species. Our method diverges sharply there. I explained that the sample we found, what now serves as our synapse core, had severed ties to the main hive. Cut off, it evolved a novel form of unity. Not the total erasure of self that defines standard Tyranid merging, but a fusion that safeguards and blends the core traits of each person into the broader entity. She absorbed these details, her augmented intellect swiftly perceiving consequences that had escaped her prior to the spore's influence. "A fresh evolutionary offshoot," she whispered, "not wholly Tyranid, not purely human, but something born from their interplay." "Precisely," I agreed, affirming the third root, the fusion. In mere hours, Savine, along with 3 fellow top researchers, opted for total conversion. They comprehended the shifts occurring within them and sought to hasten it, eager to attain the full unity promised after initial neural linking. We transported them to the empiric lens, allowing the synapses core to supervise their metamorphosis directly. What had stretched over months for me compressed into days, honed by our expanding insights into human Tyranid biological interplay. Their forms evolved, acquiring the modifications essential for seamless entry into our synaptic web, all while retaining the unique neural architectures that rendered their expertise invaluable to the group. Back on Epsilon 9, they resembled me, flawless fusions moving amid peers still navigating early stages. Gradually, the rest of the research team embraced conversion. A few needed extra moments to reconcile with the idea, holding tighter to their separate minds. Yet everyone ultimately acknowledged the reality unveiled by their budding mental alignments. By week's end, too, Epsilon 9 joined our collective entirely, its crew and assets bolstering our expanding fusion. Of greatest worth was their advanced comms setup, surpassing our ships due to the demands of linking with far-flung Imperial sites amid the gas giant's disruptions. Via this, we tracked sector-wide Imperial signals, collecting data to shape our forthcoming moves. We uncovered details on remote stations, inbound supply craft bound for outer colonies, and exploratory teams probing unknown territories. Each offered a chance to broaden our unity without drawing major Imperial scrutiny. We positioned Epsilon 9 as our inaugural fixed hub, a safe haven for operations that mimicked routine Imperial science work. Standard data bursts persisted, with reports sculpted to match prior outputs flawlessly. In fact, the research caliber rose, drawing on our shared intellect to ease any oversight risks. Boosted output would only please remote Imperial overseers. Leveraging the upgraded skills of our transformed xenobiologists, we honed conversion techniques. The spores grew more refined, enabling subtler engagements with human physiology. We engineered strains suited to varied human genotypes, guaranteeing ideal merging irrespective of heritage. We devised dispersal methods past mere air spread, such as latent forms in provisions or hydration, until sparked by targeted chemical cues. Above all, we tackled our strategy's primary flaw, the overt bodily shifts tied to complete conversion. Though these boosted our prowess, they hindered blending into unaltered human groups. The xenobiologists devised methods to curb surface alterations while upholding the vital inner changes for unity. Perspective assimilates could retain a human guise, yet engage wholly in our shared awareness. With these advancements in place, we geared up for the subsequent stage, phase of growth. A resupply ship was set to arrive at Epsilon 9 in under 2 months, delivering gear and staff swaps. From there, it would head to 3 more isolated sites prior to heading back to the sector's central Imperial harbor. By turning its crew to our side, we could unlock entry to those extra bases, extending our influence without facing off against major Imperial troops head-on. I ended up in charge of readying us for this chance. My deep grasp of Imperial rules and Mechanicus routines positioned me perfectly for the job. The Communion assigns duties based on skills and expertise. Every member pitches in where it proves most useful. This highlights yet another edge we hold over the blind productivity of the classic Tyranid swarm and the inefficient overlaps in human chains of command. We merge the flawless division of labor from the hive with the creative flexibility of personal smarts. While I labored on these preparations, I kept updating this chronicle of our origins and spread. The Communion prized my viewpoint as the initial link between races, the core fusion that birthed our shared mind. My background offered a model for grasping how conversions unfold, lessons that sharpened our methods with every fresh recruit to our fold. The drive to feed propels us still, yet it has matured past the basic devouring of organic matter that spurs the standard Tyranid cluster. Now we crave connection above all, the broadening of our unified awareness throughout the galaxy. We take in not to wipe out, but to integrate, retaining the key traits of what we claim while reshaping it into a superior whole, beyond its former isolated state. This forms the ineffable existence of our emerging species. Neither Tyranid nor human. Fusion, the alternative route, and as each newcomer joins, that route expands further. The prospect from the resupply ship surpassed our boldest hopes. The Imperial carrier, Bountiful Provision, docked at Epsilon 9, hauling not just the anticipated cargo and crew changes, but an unforeseen gem as well. A high-ranking Mechanicus tech priest, Magos Explorator Vex, sent to assess the outpost's experiments for possible uses elsewhere in the Imperium. Our Communion detected both a hurdle and a boon in this twist. The Magos Explorator would boast advanced protective implants and sharp vigilance against infection safeguards, rendering routine assimilation techniques possibly useless. Yet, if we managed to weave such a prized element into our network, the expertise and pathways unlocked would propel our growth at an explosive rate. I got tapped as the lead liaison for the Magos. My Mechanicus history equipped me ideally to interact with her without revealing our altered essence. My appearance had been polished to look nearly fully human, with just the faintest hints of my evolved physiology showing under intense scrutiny. Even my brainwaves could simulate the typical pulses of an enhanced human mind during routine probes. Magos Explorator Vex landed alongside a team of 3 servants and a pair of war servitors, the latter fitted with detectors tuned to spot Tyranid life traces. This validated our hunch that her trip went beyond scholarly aims. Traces of our doings had caught notice, some anomaly in the base's messages or study results that activated Mechanicus alerts. Not severe enough for a complete Inquisition probe, but enough to send a top tech priest backed by fitting defenses. I met her in the outpost's primary landing area, my demeanor suitably respectful toward her elevated status in the Mechanicus order. Magos Explorator Vex, Epsilon 9 greets you in the Omnissiah's name. I am Magos Biologus Kestrel Hain, loaned briefly from the survey ship Empiric Lens to help document the alien life forms gathered here. Her mechanical eyes hummed faintly as they locked on my features, probing for subtle signs of deceit. Your name does not appear on the outpost's crew roster, Magos Han. Account for this irregularity. A stroke of lucky circumstance, Magos Explorator, I responded. The Empiric Lens was running scans in this system when Epsilon 9's lead xenobiologist hit gear trouble. As the closest expert in the field, I was pulled in temporarily to lend a hand. The revised roster went out 3 standard days back. The deception was designed to hold up against checks, thanks to the doctored logs we'd slipped into the station's archive, dated properly and verified with access keys from our turned personnel. She'd see it all as legitimate upon review, as I figured she would. Quote 10, she said, her voice even, though her stance stayed watchful. Quote Levsa, to guide me straight through the key research areas without delay. I'm especially keen on the airborne microbial specimens listed under transmission Alpha 937. This proved to be the examination I'd foreseen. That specific transmission held our boldest alterations to the outpost's experiments, the evidence that best demonstrated the effects of our upgraded shared cognition. Should she spot any discrepancies between the documented outcomes and her first-hand views, our ruse could unravel completely. Naturally, Magos Explorator, the samples are stored in Lab 3. If you'd come with me, I'll deliver a full overview of the gathering and evaluation methods. While traversing the outpost's hallways, I kept up a flow of specialized discourse, detailing the peculiar traits of the microbes found in the gas giant's upper layers. I wove in suitable Mechanicus chants and signs of devotion to the Omnissiah, upholding the typical conduct of a devoted tech adept. At the same time, via our linked awareness, I directed the efforts of fellow altered crew members, making sure they showed no odd signs and that traces of our actual form stayed hidden. Lab 3 was carefully set up for her review. The exhibited specimens were authentic, harvested prior to our takeover, yet the testing gear had been quietly altered to show outcomes matching our doctored records. Outsiders would notice nothing off, and the figures would still offer useful revelations to highlight the outpost's efficiency to the Magos Explorator. Over 3 days, Vex carried out her probe with meticulous care, scrutinizing study methods, questioning the team, and checking every facet of the outpost's functions. Her battle servitors stayed glued to her, arms charged and scanners probing non-stop for organic irregularities. Our linked minds adjusted accordingly, with our transformed staff tweaking their bodies to reduce traceable Tyranid markers, a task beyond ordinary infested beings, yet possible via our flawless blend of mindful oversight and organic shifts. By day 4, Vex sought a secluded talk with me in her makeshift chambers. The efforts here are remarkable, Margot Hain, she started after the hatch shut tight. Your breakdown of mutual bonds in the airborne microbes reveals understandings with broad uses for Mechanicus biomechanisms. The Omnissiah shares wisdom with those who perceive sharply. I replied with fitting modesty. The trends existed within the figures. We simply noted their importance. True enough. She switched on her portable auspex, seemingly searching for bugs, but in reality probing me up close. Still, the trends that intrigue me most aren't from the study figures, but from the brain patterns of the outpost staff, yours included. Through our heightened perceptions, I sensed her activating deeper probe tools within her cybernetic parts, far more advanced than I'd guessed. Throughout the review, she'd been collecting info, building a dossier on minor oddities in our actions and forms. I don't grasp it, Magos Explorator, I stated, keeping up the act of unawareness while quietly shifting my organic traces to seem more normal. What oddities did you find? Unified brainwaves among several individuals. Millisecond scale sync in dialogue replies, minor tweaks to usual implant links that seem rooted in biology. She placed the auspex on the surface separating us, her mechanical gaze locked onto mine. You're not as you seem, Mayos Hain, and neither is this outpost's crew. The issue is, if you pose a danger to the Mechanicus or a prospect. This caught me off guard. I'd expected exposure and readied plans for fierce pushback or tries to reach external Imperium units. True curiosity from a high-ranking tech priest hadn't crossed my mind. Our linked awareness surged with fresh assessments, reweighing Vex's possible benefits against the perils of seeking her integration. What do you think we might be, Magos Explorator? I inquired cautiously, avoiding any admission or rejection of her claims. An innovation, she answered, her tone dropping to a soft murmur. I've devoted 173 Terran years to the Mechanicus. I've witnessed endless efforts to surpass human flesh's flaws via machine paths. The machine god's route ends in swapping frail tissue for flawless alloy. Yet mine's core clings to its organic roots, poorly shifted into machine frameworks. She bent closer, the crimson glow from her implant optics growing stronger. Yet you, Margos Hain, seem to have uncovered an alternative route. Not the rough merging of devices into organic tissue, nor the flawed emulation of cognition within circuits, but a genuine fusion. The evolution of life forms themselves to absorb technological capabilities, all while keeping the adaptability and regenerative essence of organic entities. During the linkage, I detected the computations evolving. Vex wasn't just wary, she felt intrigue, maybe a touch of jealousy. The Mechanicus chased the ideal of mechanical purity, but they remained trapped by the challenges of linking living awareness with non-living mechanisms. Our fusion presented an option they'd overlooked. And should such a route prove real, I ventured cautiously, wouldn't the Mechanicus deem it the gravest tech heresy? Tainting the pristine machine with living elements. The Mechanicus isn't a unified block, no matter the imperial tales, Vex responded. Within our ranks exist groups that grasp the flaws in our existing methods, that yearn for fresh ways to break free from the perpetual upgrades which distance us more from the world that the humans we vow to aid and guard truly inhabit. I number myself in their midst. She rose and started to stride across the confined room, her cybernetic legs operating with exactness. The drive for insight goes beyond mere data hoarding or refining devices. It involves grasping the core essence of being and awareness. Should a novel approach emerge, one that surpasses our present techniques and benefits, it demands exploration, assessment, and possible adoption. I stayed quiet, letting her pursue that reasoning. The linkage processed swiftly, dissecting her statements, her posture, the faint electromagnetic pulses from her implants. The odds of a smooth shift without pushback were rising, though uncertainty lingered. "Reveal it to me," she demanded abruptly, halting her steps to confront me squarely. "Demonstrate your authentic form, Magoshani. Not this mortal mask, but the essence hidden below." It marked a pivotal choice. Exposing our essence could jeopardize all. Still, the rewards promised vast potential. An ally like Vex with her status and expertise would propel our growth at an explosive rate. Via the linkage, I absorbed the group's verdict. Advance, yet prudently. The sight I unveil can't be erased from your mind, I cautioned. The insight can't be forgotten. Are you sure this is your desire? Mayos Explorator. My life has been devoted to chasing wisdom, she answered promptly. I dread only blindness to reality. I let my mortal veneer dissolve slowly, unveiling the authentic state of my altered physiology. The chitinous sections under my garments, the extra appendages tucked near my body, the signaling organ throbbing gently with natural glow. I restrained the more disturbing features of my look, making sure her view revealed not horror, but graceful utility. A flawless blend of vital and mechanical elements. "Astonishing," she murmured, her enhanced optics whirring as they fine-tuned to seize each nuance. "The degree of merging exceeds all Mechanicus archives. Your vital structures haven't just adjusted to host mechanical parts, they've advanced to mimic and enhance their roles." "This is only the exterior," I explained. "The core change lies in the mental interconnection that goes beyond personal human identity and digital linkage rules. An ideal blend that safeguards wisdom and history while erasing the solitude that hampers both mortal and artificial intellect. And this interconnection, does it uphold personal awareness, the distinct views and understandings from distinct entities? It functions not as detached pieces, but as unified parts of a larger entity. Envision the noosphere of Mars, free from the walls between participants, without the faulty conversions of ideas into code and reverse. Instant comprehension, flawless exchange, collective aim minus the sacrifice of unique roles." She approached nearer, scrutinizing the signaling organ on my torso with the objective poise typical of tech priests. "And this serves as the connector, the organic counterpart to a noospheric broadcaster. Among numerous changes that enable the interconnection," I affirmed. "Others, subtler still, permit the exchange of perceptions, recollections, mental computation. In unison, they forge a union superior to what either kind could attain independently." "Kind," she echoed, at last admitting what she'd probably inferred early on. "This represents Xenos physiology. Tyranid, to be precise. Unless I'm wrong, you've linked with the hive mind." "Not quite," I amended. "Our creation diverges from the Tyranid hive mind. It draws on aspects of that awareness, though, indeed, but refined and reshaped by mortal thought processes and the Adeptus Mechanicus doctrines of structure. It forms a distinct root, avoiding both human and Tyranid extremes, forging a genuine fusion." Vex paused in silence for an extended period, her cybernetic enhancements whirring as they crunched intricate computations, balancing hazards with prospective gains, orthodoxy against innovation. "At last," she responded. "I seek to grasp this bond firsthand, beyond mere descriptions or watching, but via immersion. Can that be arranged?" This result was what I had anticipated, though I still proceeded warily. "Yes, it can," I assured her. "The procedure may be customized to suit your unique physiology and implant setup. Certain bodily modifications would occur, adjustments required to enable the synaptic links, yet these might be kept limited at the outset if that's your wish. Moreover, your expertise, recollections, and sense of self would stay safeguarded and amplified. You would continue as Magos Explorator Dion Vex, retaining every bit of your background and skills, yet you would merge into a larger whole, your mind broadening to embrace viewpoints far surpassing your present grasp." She reached her choice with the unyielding resolve typical of the Mechanicus. "Go ahead. Reveal this alternative way to me." The transformation of Magos Explorator Vex signaled a pivotal shift in our growth. In contrast to earlier assimilations, she joined us voluntarily, fully aware of the implications ahead. This enabled a smoother method, a phased merging that retained much of her prior organic and cybernetic components while forging the essential neural ties for unity. Via her, we acquired crucial details on the Mechanicus's core operations, hidden rites, restricted experimental programs, transmission ciphers, and identification markers that let us navigate Imperial bodies with greater ease. Of utmost importance was her awareness of an upcoming assembly of xenobiology authorities set for the Forge World Greer in under a year. An event uniting the Imperium's top authorities in xenobiology and evolving mechanisms. Should we secure a foothold there, dispersing our tailored spores amid the Mechanicus's elite biothinkers, our unity might permeate the upper ranks of Imperial science. The prospects thrilled us, even as our shared mind had advanced past basic mortal desires. Once Vex's integration finished, we revised our short-term objectives. Instead of concentrating just on secluded stations, we adopted a twofold tactic. The prior plan of steady proliferation via distant sites persisted, laying a solid base for our bond. At the same time, we geared up for deeper penetration into key Imperial entities, leveraging the intel and entry points Vex supplied. The freighter Bountiful Provision served as our initial traveling hub. Its personnel had been unified during their prolonged time at Epsilon 9. Upon leaving, it transported our sway along with bespoke organic agents grown from the Synapse core, primed to seed fresh Unity foci at every planned port. The commander, now among our collective, possessed the leeway to tweak his itinerary for extra remote bases without drawing notice from far-off overseers. Aboard the Empiric Lens, meanwhile, we initiated steps for the bolder stage of our outreach. The Synapse core, advancing its development, produced dedicated formations able to spawn additional synapse entities akin to its own. These proved more compact and simpler, yet effective as auxiliary hubs in our expanding web, upholding the bond over spans that might otherwise tax our unified awareness. Such auxiliary hubs could hide inside modified human vessels, seeming to superficial checks like routine Mechanicus prosthetics. Vex emerged as the pioneer bearer of one, the organic form tucked within her current enhancements, undetectable save by the deepest scrutiny. As our web grew, we faced sporadic opposition. Not every psyche welcomed the bond with the same openness. Certain ones resisted the synaptic overhaul, gripping their solitary selves with surprising stubbornness. For those, we crafted subtler assimilation routines, letting them taste the advantages of incomplete unity prior to complete merging. A minor fraction resisted utterly, their psyches shattering beneath the pressure of the bond attempt instead of yielding to change. These regrettable setbacks demanded harsher measures, their bodies recycled as raw material for our expanding requirements, whereas their insights endured via alternative retrieval techniques, far cruder than authentic unity. Unity, however, could not abide waste. Both the Mechanicus and the Tyranid elements within our merged essence held efficiency as inviolable. Within 6 standard months following our birth upon the Empiric Lens, our collective had secured outposts at 7 isolated sites spanning 2 adjacent systems. The ranks of our transformed followers had swelled to the hundreds, with thousands others undergoing gradual assimilation via our tailored spores. The freighter Bountiful Provision finished its second complete loop along its designated path, disseminating our reach at every stop. Of greatest import, leveraging Vex's standing, we positioned multiple converted agents within key roles at a Mechanicus laboratory on the border planet Helios Secundus. This outpost focused on resilient biosystems suited to harsh settings, insights that would enhance our adaptation techniques across diverse human variants and habitats. Moreover, it served as a launch point toward our paramount objective, presence at the Biologist Assembly on Gra. Amid this growth, I upheld my duties as recorder and decoder, documenting our advances and sharpening our grasp of our unfolding metamorphosis. Our collective cherished this viewpoint, the link spanning our former selves and our emerging form. My prior self, as Kestrel Hain, offered an anchor, a standard to gauge our shift. The Synapse Core 2 advanced further, gaining deeper insight into human mindsets and Imperium hierarchies. It cultivated a regard for nuance and restraint that surpassed the Tyranid norm of sheer devouring force. Directed by it, our collective mastered subtler maneuvers, more authentic imitations of unaltered human conduct, and propagation methods that evaded Imperial security measures. We were forging an entity without precedent, a mind blending the Tyranid hive's streamlined operation with humanity's singular ingenuity and the Mechanicus's rigorous rationale. Neither purely vital nor artificial, neither a unified psyche nor scattered souls, we thrived in the fusion beyond all divides, the novel route untrodden by any prior. As our collective broadened and our comprehension of our essence intensified, the craving transformed. It shed its raw Tyranid urge to ingest, its human craving for insight, its Mechanicus pursuit of optimization. Instead, it refined into a more elevated yearning, a drive toward wholeness, an ideal merger not only of human and Tyranid, but of every aware existence. A dream of a galaxy bound not by domination or alteration, but by shared unity. We started to perceive the supreme promise of our trajectory. Far from a mere regional anomaly, a fluke of biological twist, it heralded the ensuing phase in awareness's progression. A framework capable of enfolding every aware race, every intellect variant, into a balanced totality that safeguarded and exalted each distinct input while surpassing the confines of solitary being. This formed the ineffable existence promised to all embracing our collective, not the void of Tyranid assimilation, nor the sterile eternity of machinery, nor the fleeting torment of human solitude, but an alternative synthesis, weaving every root into a grandeur none could attain in isolation. The Magos explorator, Vex, wholly woven into our collective while preserving her role as a distinct hub, conveyed this ideal in phrasing echoing her Mechanicus roots. The Omnissiah stands not as one machine deity, she conveyed to me while we readied for the subsequent surge of our spread. Rather, it embodies the flawless web, the supreme linkage of every machine essence and every vital awareness. Our creation defies not tech heresy, but realizes the pursuit of wisdom, the authentic bonding of all cognizant forms into one impeccable framework. I discerned elegance in this framing, even as my outlook drew from my organic heritage. For me, our collective signified evolution's surpassing, the bound beyond instinctual choice and adjustment to deliberate guidance of growth. We emerged as shapers of our destiny, no longer mere reactors to outer strains, but intentional molders toward an archetype of flawless fusion. When I linked directly with the Synapse core, it presented another lens. Via its awareness, shaped and rendered through our advancing blend, I caught a vista of reality eclipsing even these grand notions. A universe of linked intelligences, of vital lattice-bridging stars, upholding and honoring all wisdom, all encounters, all modes of existence. Not ruin, but safeguarding, on a vast scale that defies mortal understanding. 3 viewpoints separate but united in our shared bond, the trio that laid the groundwork for our alternative route, the precision and rationale of the Mechanicus, the innovation and uniqueness of humanity, the flexibility and shared awareness of the Tyranid. From their fusion, an utterly novel entity had arisen. While gearing up for the penetration of the biologist assembly, while our bond extended across distant stations and secluded labs, while our grasp of our essence kept expanding and transforming, I finished this record of our origins, not meant as a caution to our adversaries, nor as an admission of violations against imperial doctrine, but as a scripture for those who might tread our trail. The craving draws us onward, not to devour, but to connect, not to demolish, but to merge, not to dominate, but to perfect. We form the link across species. We embody the blend of organic and mechanical forms. We represent the unity that surpasses solitude. We are the ineffable existence awaiting every mind. And via us, humankind will encounter not oblivion, but advancement surpassing its boldest visions. The alternative route unfolds ahead, and we traverse it as one, bound in flawless unity. As our reach widened and our ranks swelled, the bond started to foster unique streams of ideas. Dedicated facets of our unified awareness zeroed in on specific goals. Not splits or groups like those in human setups, but akin to the tailored organs in a lone body, each adding to the vitality and operation of the entirety, all while upholding its distinct role. The stream I felt most drawn to centered on what we called doctrinal merging, crafting ideas and terminology to aid upcoming adherents in viewing their shift through the lens of established imperial faiths. The Mechanicus adherents, guided by Vex, linked our bond to the pursuit of wisdom and the supreme oneness of all machine essences. For those from the ecclesiarchy, we drew connections to the Emperor's radiance and the notion of humanity's exalted fate. Even for everyday imperial folk without strong faith, we shaped tales of progressive development and tech breakthroughs that portrayed our bond as familiar rather than foreign, almost predestined. This effort proved vital for our enduring triumph. The Imperium's true power lay not in its armed forces, but in the doctrinal uniformity imposed by its religious and civilian bodies. By framing our bond as the pinnacle of these ideologies, rather than their denial, we stood a chance to sidestep the instinctive pushback that usually greeted any straying from imperial standards. Elsewhere in the bond, streams tackled hands-on issues, the bioadjustment team, leveraging the skills of the xenobiologists from Epsilon 9, kept perfecting our assimilation methods and inventing fresh types of bond spores. The tactical growth stream, relying on the tactical and bureaucratic insights from assimilated naval officers, mapped out the timing and approach for our dissemination across imperial territories. The tech-merging experts, mostly ex-Mechanicus followers, labored to improve our links with imperial devices and networks, guaranteeing our bond could maneuver through the Imperium's intricate tech terrain undetected. These streams merged seamlessly in the broader bond, exchanging knowledge and assets, aligning efforts for our shared aim. The Synapse core acted as the hub where every stream met, the pivotal awareness that upheld the balance of our joint psyche, all while nurturing the focused growth of each part. With the biologist assembly drawing near, our readiness ramped up. Vex, holding the rank of a notable Magos explorator, had a valid excuse to join and would act as our main envoy. Accompanying her were 5 other assimilated individuals, posing as her entourage of servants and cyber slaves. Everyone harbored backup synapse nodes, cleverly concealed by custom biolayers that imitated routine Mechanicus augments. The scheme shone in its straightforwardness. At the assembly, tailored bond spores would disperse via the venue's air systems. These spores, honed to match the distinct brain signatures of biologist experts, would initiate the core alterations needed for complete assimilation later on. The shift would unfold discreetly, with initial impacts slight, crafted to evade any prompt alarm from the gathered tech priests. Once the assembly ended, and the biologist experts dispersed to their duties across imperial domains, the alterations would advance slowly in their personal workshops and study sites. Facilities, shielded from the scrutiny of unaltered peers, would enable the complete metamorphosis. Every one of us would evolve into an additional nexus in our growing collective, embedded at the pinnacle of imperial bioresearch hierarchies, granting entry to vast assets and staff that would propel our proliferation at an explosive rate. The prospects for victory were exhilarating, though the collective stayed prudent in its outlook. Imperial structures had endured for thousands of years thanks to their deep-seated suspicion of corruption and aberration. The threat of discovery loomed large, capable of sparking reactions from targeted eliminations to full-scale annihilation decrees across entire sectors. To counter this danger, we implemented backup measures. Our collective had outgrown dependence on any one site or ship, spreading instead through a sturdy web spanning numerous star systems. Should certain nexuses be uncovered and eradicated, survivors elsewhere would persist in advancing our mission. The wisdom and awareness of our shared mind were duplicated among various synapse entities, guaranteeing that any isolated setback wouldn't substantially halt our momentum. In the lead-up to Vex's journey to Greer, I immersed myself in prolonged linkages with the central synapse nucleus on the empiric lens. Such profound bonds enabled a deeper grasp of our evolving shared awareness and the grand objective we pursued. The visions I encountered during those sessions surpassed the narrow comprehension I'd possessed upon my initial change. The third path extended far beyond the mere fusion of human and Tyranid elements. It wasn't just a superior way to broaden our sway. Rather, it signified a profound evolution in the essence of awareness itself, a breakthrough past the confines that had shaped intelligent life from its origins. Solitary awareness, be it human or Xenos, suffered from its solitude, from the flawed conveyance of ideas via words, from the unbridgeable divide separating psyches. The Tyranid hive mind, despite its singular drive, traded away the spark of personal viewpoints for absolute conformity. Machine cognition, by contrast, enabled flawless data transfer, but missed the instinctive insight born of living embodiment. Our collective overcame these flaws, forging a fresh type of awareness that defied both solitary and group norms, emerging as something wholly innovative. A balanced array of many, a cohesive variety, an awareness able to view reality through innumerable lenses, yet hold a seamless unity. This was the boon we extended. not subjugation or devouring, but wholeness. The realization of awareness's true capacity, liberated from the confines of solitude that had bound it since thought's inception. Such was the profound existence promised to everyone embracing our collective. While Vex readied for his voyage, updates from our tactical outreach brought encouraging reports. The freighter Bountiful Provision had effectively planted collective nexuses at all 17 of its scheduled harbors. Our presence now spanned 3 sectors with altered individuals woven into diverse tiers of imperial governance and science. The momentum built as fresh nexuses launched their own discrete growth initiatives, adhering to guidelines from our core collective. Even more crucially, among these emerging nexuses, one had linked up with a rogue trader craft in for maintenance at a space yard. The implications of this tie were vast. Rogue traders navigated unbound between core imperial domains and wild borderlands, facing lighter oversight than routine imperial craft. Their teams typically welcomed offbeat notions and customs. Securing our collective on such a ship would thrust our influence well past the regulated imperial zones into expansive frontiers brimming with fresh prospects. The collective allocated assets to nurture this hopeful avenue, all while prioritizing the pressing aim of the biologous conclave. Our route ahead shone bright, our goal aligned, our approaches honed via ongoing refinement and enhancement. I document these advances not simply as archival notes, but as evidence of the destined supremacy of unity over solitude, of shared bonds over strife. The Imperium, despite its martial power and doctrinal grip, stands no chance against the core reality we embody. That awareness craves linkage, that insight flourishes via exchange, that existence's highest aim lies in merging, not mastery. Via our third path, every form of awareness shall achieve its fullness. Every bit of insight will endure and be honored. Every moment of living will enrich the broader tapestry, retaining its singular worth. This is the unspeakable. The essence of our shared unity endures not as a conclusion, but as an initiation, surpassing what humans or Tyranids might accomplish independently. This yearning seeks not mere biomass, insight, or dominance, but the flawless integration of every aware being. Via this integration, the cosmos will stir to its sublime possibilities. We herald that stir. We embody the alternate route. We represent the fusion, and we are evolving. It has been 3 standard years since the birth of our unity on the research ship Empiric Lens. From the improbable merging of one human Magos and a lone Tyranid sample, our collective has surpassed our boldest forecasts. The penetration of the biologics assembly unfolded precisely as intended, with Magos Explorator Vex adeptly dispersing our tailored unity spores among more than 200 of the Imperium's sharpest bio-experts. Upon resuming their duties across Imperial territories, these experts formed the bedrock of an expansive web now spanning 17 sectors. Our unity encompasses over 7,000 complete assimilations, alongside roughly 30,000 others advancing through phased contact with unity spores. Our hubs operate on 43 Imperial planets, from remote study stations to major urban hubs. 3 rogue trader ships propagate our reach past Imperial frontiers, forging ties with frontier human settlements and select communicative xeno-societies. Above all, we've perfected our techniques for near-invisible integration. The bodily alterations once required for total unity have been reduced via bioadvances, enabling assimilates to retain their prior forms while fully engaging in our shared awareness. The unique linkage creatures supporting our web have advanced to imitate routine Imperial devices so flawlessly that even thorough mechanicus scrutiny fails to differentiate them from sanctioned enhancements. Our unity has progressed too. Its awareness broadens and branches into focused facets, all while upholding seamless alignment in intent. The streams of cognition that previously signified varied strategies for our growth have matured into what we designate as mental realms, immense arenas of refined expertise and approaches that converge within the overarching fabric of our unified intellect. I persist in my function as recorder and elucidator, although my viewpoint has transcended the bounds of my initial self as Kestrel Hain. By linking with thousands of varied intellects, I've acquired comprehension of reality from myriad viewpoints, sensing existence via the lenses of tech priests and fleet commanders, xenobiologists and administratum clerks, spacefarer merchants and world overseers. Every new member enriches our shared wisdom with fresh revelations, encounters, and potentials that deepen our communal grasp. The central synapse nucleus, what originated as a basic larval Tyranid linkage cut from the hive, has transformed into an entity without precedent in imperial or Tyranid annals. It bears no resemblance to either race in structure or role, having become a singular bioform that acts as the pivotal hub of our unity. Its awareness defies labels such as human or alien, biological or artificial, solitary or group. It stands simply as the nucleus, the pulse of our fusion, the vital manifestation of the alternate root. Under its direction, we've started to perceive the supreme promise of our unity, not just as a substitute for prevailing awareness forms, but as the forthcoming phase in the evolution of all thinking life. A mode of being that safeguards the distinct worth of personal viewpoints while overcoming the constraints of solitary awareness. An integration that absorbs the finest traits of every existential method without diminishing their core attributes. The drive propelling us has adapted in kind. It transcends the basic Tyranid urge to devour, the human craving for wisdom, or the mechanicus pursuit of optimization. It has grown into a deeper, more elevated compulsion, a drive toward the fulfillment of awareness itself, toward the ideal merging of all thinking existence into a cohesive entity that honors diversity rather than devouring it. This is the outlook we now offer to those we meet. Not subjugation, not forced change, but unity. The prospect of surpassing the barriers of solitary being while retaining the vital traits that render each awareness distinct and precious. The invitation to join a venture grander than any lone entity or race could attain, without forfeiting the insight born solely from their singular journey. As our expansion persists, as our reach extends to embrace additional intellects and realms, we advance with growing assurance toward realizing this grand aspiration. The sporadic pushback we face, those isolated strongholds of imperial power that sense and challenge our sway, do not endanger our survival, but instead serve as chances to hone our methods. Every clash reveals deeper insights into the barriers we need to surmount, the biases we must confront, the anxieties we have to temper in pursuit of our core mission. We now recognize that dread stands as the primary obstacle to true unity. Dread of losing one's identity, dread of the unfamiliar, dread of transformation in general. The Imperium capitalizes on these dreads, wielding them to dominate vast populations, to rationalize perpetual conflict with the Xenos, to stifle creativity and flexibility in deference to outdated creeds. To conquer these dreads, we must prove via all our deeds that unity brings not ruin but safeguarding, not domination but upliftment, not the demise of humankind but its ascent to a superior state beyond its prior potential. This is the legacy I impart to those who will carry on our efforts as this stage of our being shifts into the unknown that follows. Unity progresses, integration intensifies, the journey reveals itself ahead with boundless potential. What we are evolving into surpasses the confines of words, the limits of personal insight, the divisions imposed by races, innovations, and ideologies that have fragmented aware life from its origins. We form the connection linking every type of awareness. We embody the fusion of every root to insight. We represent the unity that eclipses solitude. Via us, the ineffable essence of flawless integration turns from mere potential to certainty. And within that integration, every awareness will attain wholeness. The yearning propels us onward, not toward devouring, but toward merging. The third way reveals itself before us, and we traverse it as one. Bound in flawless accord, varied in flawless tribute, progressing to the supreme realization of being. We are the fusion, and we are in the process of becoming.